quote, grow the hell up. Tell me why.
Well, because there's nothing uglier than an old infant.
True.
There's nothing good about it.
True.
People who don't grow up don't
True.
find the sort of meaning in their life that sustains them through difficult times, and
Very
they're
important.
certain to encounter difficult times. And they're left bitter and resentful and without purpose and adrift and hostile and resentful and vengeful and arrogant and deceitful and of no use to themselves and of no use to anyone else and no partner for a woman, and there's nothing in it that's
Speaking
good.
truth.
So
Speaking a lot of truth
sounds
right
pretty
now.
Bad. You're saying
It's
there's a
bad.
crisis of masculinity? I mean, what do you do about it?
You help people understand why it's necessary and important for them to grow up and adopt responsibility, why that isn't a shake your finger and get your act together sort of thing, why it's more like a delineation of the kind of destiny that makes life worth living. I've been telling young men, but it's not, I wasn't specifically aiming this message at young men to begin with. It just kind of turned out that way.
And it's mostly, you admit, it's mostly men listening. I mean,
It
90% of your audiences are men.
Well, it's about 80% on YouTube, which is YouTube
can
is
feel
a male
some
domain.
things going
primarily,
on,
so it's hard to tell how much of it is because YouTube is male and how much of it is because of what I'm saying. But what I've been telling young men is that there's an actual reason why they need to grow up, which is that they have something to offer, you know, that people have within them this capacity to set the world straight, and that's necessary to manifest in the world. And that also doing so.
We do. Don't be apologetic about it. Do not be apologetic about it. To anybody, listen to this. Whether you're a man or a woman, don't be apologetic about it. You have the power to change things.
Is where you find the meaning that sustains you in life.
So what's gone wrong then?
Oh God, all sorts of things have gone wrong. I don't think that young men hear words of encouragement. Some of them never in their entire lives, as far as I can tell. That's what they tell me. And the fact that the words that I've been speaking, the YouTube lectures that I've done and put online, for example, have had such a dramatic impact is an indication that young men are starving for this sort of message, because why in the world would they have to derive it from a lecture on YouTube? You know, they're not being taught that it's important to
She don't like
develop
that.
yourself.
But does it bother you?
She does not like that.
Your audience is predominantly male.
Okay,
does that
cool.
isn't that a bit
Pass
divisive?
through. Just
No, I
pass
don't
through
think
her
so.
head.
I mean, primarily male, and Tumblr is
Well, that's
primarily
pretty divisive,
female.
isn't
Well,
it?
but Tumblr is primarily female.
But you're just saying that's the way it is.
Well, I'm not saying anything. It's just an observation that that's the way it is. There's plenty of women that are watching my lectures and coming to my talks and buying my books. It's just that the majority of them happen to be men.
And what's the problem with that? What's the problem with that? What is wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. For her, it's wrong. For her, it's wrong. If it is not wrong, she's not feeling it.
What's in it for the women, though?
There we go. I
Well,
told
what
you.
sort of partner do you want? Do you want an overgrown child? Or do you want someone to contend with that's going to help you and that
So
you
you're
can
saying
rely on?
women have some sort of duty to sort of help fix the crisis of masculinity?
It depends on what they want.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's exactly how I laid it out. Like, women deeply want men who are competent and powerful. And I don't mean power in that they can exert tyrannical control over others. That's not power. That's just corruption. Power is competence.
Competence.
And
character,
why in the world would you not want a competent
integrity.
partner? Well,
That's
I
very
know
strong.
why, actually. You can't dominate a competent partner.
So
So
you're
if you
saying
want
women
domination,
want to dominate. Is that what you're saying?
no, I'd say women who have had their relationships their relationships with men impaired, and who are afraid of such relationships, will settle for a weak partner because they can dominate them. But it's a suboptimal solution.
Do you
It
think
does
that's
no
what a
one
lot of
any
women are
good.
doing?
It's a
I
good
think
point.
there's a substantial
It's a good point right there. He's half a good point. A lot of females tend, the older they get, they tend to settle for weaker men. Does that mean that they're just settling because that's what they can get? But that's not what they want. It's just that their situation at the moment, they know that's all they can get. But in their early years, the priority was not to look for a partner, because there was all the priority, whatever those priorities were, like education, whatever. I don't want to get into that. I don't think that's the topic for today. But I think that's where it's coming from.
Substantial minority of women who do that. And I think it's very bad for them. They're very unhappy. It's very bad for their partners.
Wow.
Although the partners get the advantage of not having to take any responsibility.
But what gives you the right to say that? I mean, maybe
gives
that's
you the
how
right?
women want their relationships,
Right.
those women. I mean, you're making these vast generalizations.
She doesn't
I'm a
not like.
clinical psychologist.
Right, so you're saying you've done your research and women are unhappy dominating men.
I didn't say they were unhappy dominating men. I said it was a bad long-term solution.
Okay, you said it was
It's not
making
the
them
same
miserable.
thing. Yes, it is. And it depends on the time
You say
frame. I mean,
that?
there's intense pleasure in momentary domination. That's why people do it all the time. But it's no formula for a successful long-term relationship. That's reciprocal, right? Any long-term relationship is reciprocal, virtually by definition. So,
Let me put a quote to you from the
Sure.
book, where you say, there are whole disciplines in universities forthrightly hostile towards men. These are the areas of study dominated by the postmodern stroke neo-Marxist claim that Western culture in particular is an oppressive structure created by white men to dominate and exclude women. But then I want to put
minorities too dominate.
Okay, sure.
minorities and women.
But I want to put to you that here in the UK, for example, let's take that as an example, the gender pay gap stands at just over 9%. You've got women at the BBC recently saying that the broadcaster is illegally paying them less than men to do the same job. You've got only 7
My
women
goodness.
running the
Here
top
we go with this.
FTSE 100 company.
Here we go with this weird argument, man. If you see people getting paid more than other people, just approach them and just condemn them and say, hey, company, what the hell's going on here? Why this person is getting paid more money than me? Why you want a law to be passed? Would you think these people don't know that? That's my question. If these companies, right, they're supposedly paying more money to some man than women, why not swing the company? That's it. That's not the problem, right? I know.
Yeah.
So it seems to a lot of women that they're still being dominated and excluded, to quote your words back to you.
It does seem that way, but multivariate analysis of the pay gap indicate that it doesn't exist.
But that's
So
just
you
not
do a
true,
unit.
is it?
That's
I mean, that
absolutely
9% pay gap, that's a gap between median hourly earnings
Yeah.
between men and women.
But there's
That exists.
but there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is gender, but it's not the only reason. Like if you're a social scientist worth your salt, you never do a univariate analysis. Like you say, well, women in aggregate are paid less than men. Okay, well, then we break it down by age, we break it down by occupation, we break it down by interest, we break it down by personality.
But you're saying basically it doesn't matter if women aren't getting to the top, because that's what's skewing that gender pay gap, isn't it? You're saying, well, that's just...
Isn't that funny? When it comes to the free market, the females have to be helped by the government by passing laws instead of just working hard and getting to that skill that people are going to be able to pay for. But you didn't need like an arbitrary government to just help them with that, right? Am I wrong? Am I crazy for think like that? Am I weird to just think that that's what's going on between all these feminist movements? If the government doesn't help them, really they cannot push forward, which is bad. They want to say, right? That you're telling them that they need government interference because you're so weak to converse or even participate in the free market that you need help. I don't think nobody wants that, right? I guess there's females that they can find some problems and solution for female problems, and females will be willing to pay for those solutions, right? Let me know in the comments below.
It's a fact of
Not
life.
saying
Women
it
aren't
doesn't
necessarily
matter.
going to get to the top.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't matter either.
You're saying
I'm
it's
saying
a fact
there are
of life.
multiple reasons for it.
Yeah, but
and that
those
aren't being
reasons,
taken into
why
account.
should women put up with those reasons? Why should
Why should
women
women
be
He doesn't
content
care.
I'm not
not
saying
to
that
get
they
to the
should
top?
put up with it. I'm
Oh,
saying
this-
that the claim
man, this is going
that
downhill.
the wage gap between men and women is only due to sex is wrong. And it is wrong. There's no doubt about that. The multivariate analysis have been done. So
Well,
I can give you an example.
You keep on talking about
Wait a second.
multivariate analysis.
Let me give you an
But
example.
I'm saying that 9% pay gap exists.
Yeah.
That's a gap between men and women. I'm not saying why it exists, but it exists. Now,
Yeah, but
if
you
you're a
have to say
woman,
why
that
it
seems
exists.
pretty unfair.
You have to say why it exists.
But do you agree that it's unfair? If you're a woman,
Not
Oh, she's
necessarily.
trying
On average, you're
to
getting paid 9%
regain
less
control of the
than men. That's not
conversation.
fair,
That's
is it?
what she's doing is she's trying to regain control of the conversation by sleazy sales tactics. We're not moving forward until you answer this question. Forget about everything that we said, but let's just go to my topic. Do you agree that this 9 to 10% blah blah is a concern? It's bad in a female's eyes. Do you agree with that? Well, the multi-analysis, blah blah blah. But do you agree with that? Agree with that? That's bad. I don't care about the multi-analysis. You have to agree that's bad. That's a huge problem, right? Having conversations like this because you want to have a conversation. Jordan want to have a conversation about the truth, not about what your feelings are hurt or not about the conversation.
It depends on why it's happening. I can give you an example. Okay. There's a personality trait known as agreeableness. Agreeable people are compassionate and polite. And agreeable people get paid less than less agreeable people for the same job. Women are more agreeable than men.
True.
Again, a vast generalization. Some
It's
women
not
are
a
not more
generalization.
agreeable than
Yes,
men.
that's true, but that's right. And some women get paid more than men.
So you were saying that by and large, women are too agreeable to get the pay rises they deserve.
No, I'm saying that that's one component of a multivariate variance in the pay gap than the radical feminists claim.
Okay, so rather than denying the pay gap exists, which is what you did at the
Oh,
beginning
she
of this
didn't. She didn't accept his argument. She didn't even accept his argument. She just, again, passed it through her entire head. Didn't care. Whatever you say, bro, I don't care. Let me just go about this and that. Oh my God. Ooh.
conversation. Shouldn't you say to women, rather than being agreeable and not asking for a pay rise, go and ask for a pay rise? Make yourself disagreeable with your boss.
Oh, definitely, there's that. But I also didn't deny it existed. I denied it existed because of gender.
Okay.
See, because I'm very, very, very careful with my words.
So the pay gap exists, you accept that.
There you go with the
you're
pay
saying,
gap. Damn, man.
I mean, the pay gap between men and women exists, but you're saying it's not because of gender, it's because women are too agreeable to ask for pay rises. So
It's
make
one
them-
of the reasons.
Okay,
No, I
one
don't
of the
think he
reasons.
said that. I think it's maybe gender's one of the reasons, but there's other 18 factors, 19 factors, whatever. Beside that, there's a lot of factors. And it's true. When I was working in New York, I worked for a couple of years, a couple of music companies. And I was doing a very good job. I asked about the raise. I want a raise, and they didn't give me the raise. I just moved to the next company. Simple as that. But a lot of people, there were females, of course, they were working there for 10 to 15 years, and they were just getting paid the same amount of money for that long time. But I had that conversation, and they didn't like it, so I left. See, in that case, that's of course that's a personal experience that cannot be evidence. But I'm just talking from that side. That even I felt uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, but I knew in my heart that that's a conversation I needed to have in order for me to just move a little bit higher into the ladder. Does that make sense?
So why not get them to ask for a pay rise?
I've
Wouldn't
done
that be
that.
a fairer
I've done
way of
that
proceeding?
many, many times in my career.
And they just
I've
don't?
counseled. Oh, they do it all the time. You can. It's so one of the things that you do as a clinical psychologist is assertiveness training. So you might say, often you treat people for anxiety, you treat them for depression, and maybe the next most common category after that would be assertiveness training. And so I've had many, many women, extraordinarily competent women, in my clinical and consulting practice, and we put together strategies for their career development that involve continual pushing, competing for higher wages, and often tripled their wages within a 5-year period, teaching
you
them how to
celebrate that?
negotiate. Of course.
So
Of
do
course.
you agree that you would be happy
He's a free market guy.
if that pay gap was
why would you
eliminated
not, right?
completely?
It
Because
would be
that's
in
favor
all
of
the
that.
radical feminists are saying.
It
a
would
different
depend
perspective
on
here.
how it was eradicated and how the disappearance of it was measured.
And you're
These
saying
things
if
you
it's at the
can't- you
cost
can't-
of men, that's a problem.
Oh, there's all sorts of things that it could be at the cost of. It could even be at the cost of women's own interests. So
Because they might not be happy if they get equal pay.
No, because it might interfere with other things that are causing the pay gap that women are choosing to do.
Like having children.
Well, or choosing careers that actually happen to be paid less, which women do a lot of.
But why shouldn't women have the right to choose not to have children, or the right to choose those
Well,
demanding
they
careers?
do.
They can.
They
Yeah, that's fine.
They do. This is crazy talk, huh? They do. They can decide not to have a kid, but I think she don't want to accept. In her nature, there might be some guiltiness that comes after that, because the later, for me, for a guy, it's important for us to have kid because of the legacy, right? It's a legacy. Females is because there's a clock, right? And then her value goes lower as years pass on. She can be a multi-billionaire, but that does not convey value for her. Does that mean she can be 45, multi-billionaire, but no guy wants to just be with her? They don't care, because that's not what guys are looking for. Now she's saying that the right to not have baby, you have the right not to have baby, but you have to handle the consequences. Those consequences, she's calling her rights. She want to convey a strategic something, like a message where society does not have to portray a stigma for ladies not to have babies or not have babies their entire life. You can do that. Nobody cares. You have to handle the consequences. That's simple it is. That's my point. Yeah.
But you're saying that makes them unhappy, by and large.
I'm saying that no, I'm not saying that. I actually haven't said that so far.
You're
in the
saying
program.
it makes them miserable.
No, I
at the
said that
beginning.
what was making them miserable was having weak partners. That makes them miserable.
Oh man, he was very
But,
good. He's listening.
I would say that
He's
many
listening.
women around
He's
the age
listening.
of, I would say between 28 and 32 have a career family crisis that they have to deal with.
Yeah.
And I think that's
clock.
partly because of the foreshortened time frame that women have to contend with.
There we go. Did I
women
tell you
have
the
to
clock?
get the major pieces of their life put together faster than men, which is also partly why men aren't under so much pressure to grow up. So because for the typical woman, she has to have her career and family in order pretty much by the time she's 35, because otherwise the options start to run out. And so that puts a tremendous amount of stress on women, especially at the end of their 20s.
I think I take issue with the idea of the typical woman, because, all women are different. And that's what I want to just put another quote to you from the book.
Well,
You
they're
say,
different in some ways and the same in others.
okay, you say women become more vulnerable when they have children.
Oh,
And
yes.
you talked in one of your YouTube interviews about crazy harpy sisters. So, simple question. Is gender equality a myth in your view? Is that something that's just never going to happen?
It depends on what you mean by equality.
Being
if
treated
you mean that
fairly,
men and women
getting the same opportunities?
Okay.
fairly, we could get to a point where people were treated fairly or more fairly. I mean, people are treated pretty fairly in Western culture already, but we could
But they're
improve
really
that.
not, though, are they? I mean, otherwise, why
depends
would there only be 7 women running FTSE 100 companies in the UK? Why would there still be a pay gap?
Man, it's not because it's not in the female nature to just achieve greater position. It's not in their nature. I mean, you might have some that will do it, but it's not in their nature, right? It's not something that convey value of what they're seeking for in life. It's very different. Different. That's why you have a queen when the king already conquered the land. You didn't have a queen going out, just conquer land, and then also I'm marrying this guy. The guy will become a king. Doesn't work like that. That's why. Right? She wanna make sure that woman and man. That's not how it works. I'm not saying that there's females who they have that kind of hustle, that mentality. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Props. But it's not in their nature. Now you're gonna downgrade the standards in order for females to drive or something. Because I'm confused here. I'm okay. There's 100 guys successful and there's only 2 females that manage to just go through things and manage to get successful. I'm okay with that because it's not in their nature. They have the capability, they have the conscience, they can do it, but it's not in their nature.
which we've
Oh,
discussed
my opinion.
at length.
It's easy to
Why are
answer
women
that.
at the BBC
Let me know if I'm wrong in the
saying
comments
that they're
below.
getting paid illegally less than men to do the same job?
Well,
That's not fair,
well,
is
let's
it?
go to the first question. Those are complicated questions. Seven women. Repeat that one. There's only
Seven women running the top FTSE 100 companies in the UK.
Okay. Well, the
I mean,
first
that's not
question
fair.
might be, why would you want to do that?
Why would a man want to do it?
Good point.
I mean, it's a lot of money. It's an
there's
interesting
a
job.
certain
You know?
number of men, although not that many, who are perfectly willing to sacrifice virtually all of their life to the pursuit of a high-end career. So they'll work. These are men that are very intelligent. They're usually very, very conscientious. They're very driven. They're very high energy. They're very healthy. And they're willing to work 70 or 80 hours a week, nonstop, specialized at one thing to get to the top.
So you're saying women are just more sensible. They don't want that because it's not a
didn't
nice
say
thing.
that.
I'm saying that's part of it, definitely. And so
didn't
I
say
work
that.
So
for...
you don't think there are barriers in their way that prevent them getting to the top
Oh,
of
there
those
are some
companies?
barriers, yeah, like men, for example. I mean, to get to the top of...
Those barriers are men. So what are you gonna do? Take the men's out? That's what we're getting at. Are we getting to that point? Because women cannot get to the top, we have to take the men out of the competition. Just let women just get to the top by a lower standard. And because they cannot perform as high as a man, right? In average, right? Probably some females that they might do it, right? It's like in average, females are not stronger than men, but that doesn't mean you might have a female that she just built different, right? Okay, these are just opinion. I might be wrong.
Any organization is an incredibly competitive enterprise. And the men that you're competing with are simply not going to roll over and say, please take the position.
So let me come back to my
absolute
question.
all-out warfare.
Is gender equality a myth?
I don't know what you mean by the question. Men and women aren't the same, and they won't be the same. That doesn't mean they can't be treated fairly.
Is gender equality desirable?
If it means equality of outcome, then almost certainly it's undesirable. That's already been demonstrated in Scandinavia. Because in
What do
Scandinavia...
you mean by that? Equality of outcome is undesirable.
Well, men and women won't sort themselves into the same categories if you leave them alone to do it of their own accord. I've already seen that in Scandinavia. It's 20 to 1 female nurses to male, something like that. It might not be quite that extreme. And approximately the same male engineers to female engineers.
And that's okay. See, and that's okay. If you have no more nurses to be female than men, that's okay. I think, in my opinion, because of the nurturing nature of the female, she might perform better as a nurse. Because she's more caring in those fields. And she might, do a better job than a man. There's nothing wrong with that.
And that's a consequence of the free choice of men and women in the
Free
societies
market.
that
There
have
you go.
gone farther than any other societies to make gender equality the purpose of the law. Those are ineradicable differences. You can eradicate them with tremendous social pressure and tyranny, but if you leave men and women to make their own choices, you will not get equal outcomes.
Right, so you're saying that anyone who believes in equality, whether you call them feminists, call them whatever you want to call them, should basically give up because it ain't going to happen.
Only if they're aiming at equality of outcome.
So you're saying give people equality of opportunity, that's fine.
It's not only fine, it's eminently desirable for everyone, for individuals and for society.
But still women aren't going to make it. That's what you're really
It
saying.
depends on your measurement techniques. They're doing just fine in medicine. In fact, there are far more female physicians than there are male physicians. There are lots of disciplines that are absolutely dominated by women. Many, many disciplines. And they're doing great. So
Let me put something else to you from the book. You say the introduction of the equal pay for equal work argument immediately complicates even salary comparison beyond practicality for one simple reason. Who decides what work is equal? It's not possible. So the simple question is, do you believe in equal pay?
Still beating that drum, huh?
well, I made the argument there. It's like it depends on
So
who
you
defines
don't
Still beating
believe
the
in equal
drum.
pay?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Because a lot of people listening to you will just say, I mean, are we going back to the dark
That's
ages
because they're actually
here?
not listening. They're
I'm
just
listening very
projecting
carefully,
what
and I'm
they think.
hearing you basically saying women need to just...
You're not hearing. Jordan might be right. You might be projecting. You have to be careful now, miss.
just accept. They're never going to make it on equal terms, equal
that's not what
outcomes
it's
is how you defined it.
No, I didn't
If
say
I was
that.
a young
said
woman
that equal...
watching that, I would go, well, I might as well just go and play with my Cindy dolls and give
didn't
up
say
trying
that.
at school because I'm not going to get the
Projection
top
out.
job I want.
That's projection.
Because
said
there's
that
someone sitting there saying it's not possible
I
and it's
said
not
that
desirable.
equal
It's going to make
outcomes
you
aren't
miserable.
desirable.
That's a
what I
projection.
said. It's a
Yeah,
bad
it's not
social
desirable.
goal. I didn't say that women shouldn't be striving for the top or anything like that, because I don't believe that for a second.
Striving for the top, but you're going to put all those hurdles in their way, as has been in their way for centuries, and that's fine. You're saying that's fine.
No, I really
The
think
patriarchal
I
system
really
is
think
just
that's
fine.
silly. I do. I think
Ooh,
that's
she
silly.
went full
I
feminist
really
now.
do. I mean, look at your situation. You're hardly unsuccessful.
Yeah, and I have
How do
battled
you
quite
manage
hard
it?
to get where I've got to.
Exactly. Good
So
for
that's
you.
okay. Battling is good. This is all
It's
about the fight.
inevitable.
But you talk about men fighting.
would-
So how would you see what I'm saying? So eliminating all this obstacle for men is a reason to become a greater thing. She wants to just eliminate all those obstacles that you think is just a patriarchy. That you should just give things to people. It's the weirdest thing ever.
Well, let me just put another thing to you from the book.
Why
You're
wouldn't
saying
you have to
real.
battle for a high-quality position?
Well, I notice in your book you talk about real
Ignore her.
conversations between
You just ignore
men
him.
containing, quote, an underlying threat of physicality.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
What about real conversations between women? Is that something, or are we sort of too amenable and reasonable?
No, it's just that the domain of physical conflict is sort of off limits for you.
Well,
And
you
it's
just said
rather
that I've
unfortunate.
fought to get where I've got.
Yeah, but
What does that make me?
well,
a
I
sort of
don't
proxy
imagine.
man or
I
something?
don't imagine that you've. Yeah, to some degree, I suspect you're not very agreeable.
So that's the thing. Successful women, I'm not very agreeable.
Right.
But
I've noticed that
successful-
actually in this conversation.
At least
and
we
I'm
can have a
sure
joke
it
about it.
served your career well.
Successful women, though, basically have to wear the trousers, in your view. They have to sort of become men to succeed, is what you're saying.
Well, if they're going
I've had to fight to succeed,
if they're
therefore
going to
I'm an
compete
honorary
against
man.
men, certainly masculine traits are going to be helpful. I mean, one of the things I do in my counseling practice, for example, when I'm consulting with women who are trying to advance their careers, is to teach them how to negotiate and to be able to say no and to not be easily pushed around and to be formidable. And you need to, if you're going to be successful, you need to be smart, conscientious, and tough.
Well, here's a radical idea. Why don't the bosses adopt the male bosses, shall we say, adopt some female traits so that women don't have to fight and get their sharp elbows out for the pay rises? It's just accepted if they're doing the same job, they get the same pay.
Well, I would say partly because it's not so easy to determine what constitutes the same job.
But that's because, arguably,
Yeah.
there are still men dominating our industries.
Oh,
our
okay. So she think if we change everything to female perspective, there will not be no obstacle, no nothing. Everything will be a smooth sailing from there, and we're gonna have a higher standards and everything. Okay.
society, and therefore they've dictated the terms for so long that women have to battle to be like the men.
No, it's not true. It's not true. So, for
Where's the
example,
evidence?
well, I can give you an example very quickly. So I worked with women who worked in high-powered law firms in Canada for about 15 years, and they were as competent and put together as anybody you would ever meet. And we were trying to figure out how to further their careers. And there was a huge debate in Canadian society at that point that was basically ran along the same lines as your argument, is that if the law firms didn't use these masculine criteria, then perhaps women would do better. But the market sets the damn game. It's like...
And the market is dominated by men.
No,
So
it's
what
not.
I'm
It's
asking
not.
you-
The market is dominated by women. They make 80% of the consumer decisions. That's not the case
What?
at all.
If you're talking
80%.
about people who stay at home looking after children, by and large, they are still women. So they're going out doing the shopping. But that
But what is wrong with that? That the female thing is staying at home. She wants to stay at home, taking care of the kids, and just make sure that the family and the culture is good. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? We survived hundreds and thousands of years doing that. What's wrong with that?
is changing.
They make all the
what I want
consumer
to ask
decisions.
You, okay, so
the
what I want to
market
ask
is
you-
driven by
okay,
women, not men.
Right.
Okay, and if you're a lawyer
And they
in
still
Canada...
pay more for the same sort of goods. That's been proven, that men, you buy a blue bicycle helmet, it's going to cost less than a pink one. Anyway, we'll come on to that.
It's partly because men are less agreeable. Right, so they won't put up with it.
I want to ask you, is it not desirable to have some of those female traits you're talking about? I'd say that's a generalization, but you've used the words female traits Is it not desirable to have some of them at the top of business? I mean, maybe there wouldn't have
They
been
don't predict
a banking
success.
crisis.
They
if
don't
that had
predict
happened.
success in the workplace. The things that predict success in the workplace are intelligence and conscientiousness. Agreeableness negatively predicts success in the workplace. And
So
so
you're
does
saying
high
that-
negative emotion.
You're saying that women
true.
aren't intelligent enough to run these top
He
companies?
didn't say that. He did not say that. He did not say that. Wow. He did not say that. He just said that agreeableness was not a predictable asset to just know whether you're going to be successful or not. All stuff that we're talking about. Come on, man.
Well, I didn't say that at all.
You said that female traits don't predict success.
But I didn't say that
Intelligence and
intelligence wasn't. I didn't
conscientiousness
say that
do.
intelligence and conscientiousness
Well, you were saying that
weren't
intelligence
female
and
traits.
conscientiousness by implication are not female traits.
No.
I mean,
I'm not
that's very
saying that.
dangerous
I'm
territory.
not saying that at all.
Are women less
There's-
intelligent than men? by
No.
and large?
She got
No,
triggered,
no.
bro.
No, the data on that's
She
pretty
got
clear.
triggered.
The average IQ for a woman and the average IQ for a man is identical.
Very
There is
similar.
some debate about the flatness of the distribution, which is something that James Damore pointed out, for example, in his memo, but there's no difference at all in general cognitive ability. There's no difference to
No, they
speak
have the
of in
intelligence, yeah, of
conscientiousness.
course.
Women are a bit more orderly than men, and men are a little bit more industrious than women. But the difference isn't big.
Yeah,
I
it
don't-
makes sense. That's why when you with someone, the females tend to nest their house, very nesty. They nest everything. You bring that structure to the home, right? You bring structure to the home as a man. You say, okay, let's just make sure that the structure is the house needs to be clean. And she said, don't worry. The female say, I'm gonna make sure that it is clean, and she start nesting, right? Nesting around, okay, and make sure that everything. That's how when you see some of these survival shows, you always see the female house looks very homey, the shelters. The guy's house look more practical, like very square, right? There's a difference, right? But it's needed. Those differences need to be needed in a nice nuclear family, right?
That
Plenty of-
averages into
Plenty of men
conscientiousness.
who aren't necessarily as
Well, of
industrious.
course,
But we'll,
these are-
we'll,
okay.
we'll
But no,
female
but you
traits,
asked me
though,
a
why
question.
are they not
Feminine traits,
Why
let's
are they
say.
not desirable at the top of feminine traits? Why are they not desirable at the top of business?
It's hard to say. I'm just laying out the empirical evidence. Like we know the traits that predict success.
But we also know, because companies by and large have not been dominated by women over the centuries, we have nothing to compare it to. It's an experiment.
True, and it could be the case that if companies modified their behavior and became more feminine, that they would be successful. But
You
there's
seem
no
doubtful about
evidence
that.
for it. I'm not neither doubtful nor non-doubtful. There's no
So
evidence
why
for
not
it.
give it a go, as the radical
Because the
feminists
evidence
would
suggests,
say?
well, it's fine. If someone wants to start a company and make it more feminine and compassionate, let's say, and caring in its overall orientation towards its workers and towards the marketplace,
Oy.
then that's a perfectly reasonable experiment to run.
It's not gonna
My
last
point
long.
is that there is no evidence that those traits predict success in the workplace. And there's
Because
this
it's never
evidence
been
is,
tried.
well, that's not really the case. Women have been in the workplace for what? At least ever since I've been around, the representation of women in the workplace has been about
Yeah.
50%. So we've run the experiment for a fairly reasonable period of time, but not, certainly not for centuries.
Let me move on to another debate that's been very controversial for you.
Okay.
And this is, you got in trouble for refusing to call trans men and women by their preferred personal pronouns.
No,
I want to
that's
ask-
not actually true. I got in trouble because I said I would not follow the compelled speech dictates of the federal and provincial government. I actually never got in trouble for not calling anyone anything.
Right.
That didn't
You
happen.
wouldn't follow the change of law, which was designed
Not
to
once it was
outlaw
law.
discrimination.
No.
Why
Well,
should
that's what
your-
they said it was designed to do.
Okay, you cited freedom of speech in that. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Man, some of these questions, I'm just dropping IQs here. I'm trying not to, but it's hard. It's hard when you are like, because freedom of speech goes both way. Freedom of speech is just I don't know how Canada is built, but in the United States, the First Amendment is to protect you against persecution to say whatever the hell you want to say. Unless, of course, it's just to cause, terrorism and stuff like that. Even that, sometimes they slide it. Like, they're not going to prosecute you. But there's, you want to accuse you want to threat someone on death and stuff like that. Even in some state, they would allow you to slide that as well. But it's freedom of speech, you just go both ways. It doesn't mean like, because I got offended, The law has to come down and just whoever offend me, take him down, take her down. That doesn't work like that. That's why they call it freedom of speech. You need to mature.
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive going on.
So
And
do
that is
you-
what you should do. But
And
you're
do you
exercising
think-
your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and I'm just trying to work that out. I mean,
Oh.
Ha, gotcha.
Oh,
You have got me, you have got-
there we go. There we go. There you go. You see? Because he was a male, she thought he has a privilege to be the target. But when you flip the things around, now it doesn't play that way, right? Exactly. Nobody has ever put her in that position. In that moment, she has a conscious dissonance. Her reality was tested.
got me. I'm trying to work
about
that through in
time.
my head. Yeah, it took a while.
It did, yeah.
Took a while. You have voluntarily come into the studio and agreed to be questioned. A trans person in your class has come to your class and said they want to be called
And that's never
she.
happened. And I would call them she.
So you would. So you've kind of changed your tune on that.
No, I said that right from the beginning. What I said at the beginning was that I was not going to cede the linguistic territory to radical leftists, regardless of whether or not it was put in law. That's what I said.
You've
And then
also-
the people who came after me said, oh, you must be transphobic and you'd mistreat a student in your class. It's like, I never mistreated a student in my class. I'm not transphobic, and that isn't what I said.
Well, except you've also called trans campaigners authoritarian, haven't you? I mean, isn't that grossly
Well, only in the
insensitive?
broader context of my claims that radical leftist ideologues are authoritarian,
Yes,
which
but
they are.
You're saying someone who's trying to work out their gender identity, who may well have struggled with that, had quite a
No
tough
doubt
time
have
over the
struggled
years.
with it, yeah.
You're comparing them with, Chairman Mao, who
No, just the
saw the
activists.
deaths of millions of people. Well,
Just the
even if the
activists.
activists, they're trans people too. They have
It's
a
all
right
about
to
the
say
feelings.
these things.
Yeah, but
How
they
they
don't have
feel.
the right to
Grossly
speak for their whole
insensitive.
community.
Forget about the fact that things could happen, but let's just take care of the feelings.
Compare them to Chairman Mao or, I could Pinochet, Augusto Pinochet. I mean, this is grossly insensitive. Isn't
I
it?
didn't compare them to Pinochet.
Well,
I did compare
he
them to
was
Mao.
an authoritarian.
He's a
wasn't he?
right-winger, though. I was comparing them to the left-wing totalitarians. And
Okay,
I do believe they
Mao-
are left-wing
Mao-
totalitarians.
Under Mao, millions of people died. I
Right.
mean, there's no comparison between
That's-
Mao and a trans activist, is there?
Why not?
Because trans activists aren't killing millions of people?
The philosophy that's guiding their utterances is the same philosophy.
The consequences are...
Not yet.
You're saying that trans activists
No.
could lead to the deaths of millions of people? What
No,
they're
I'm
doing-
saying that the philosophy that drives their utterances is the same philosophy that already has driven us to the deaths of millions of people.
Okay, tell us how that philosophy is in any way
She's so.
possible.
You have to give it to her. She's a very professional reporter, and she knows how to control a conversation. Jordan Peterson has the luck that he's a very smart man, but she's the one controlling the conversation. She's always leading with questions. It's just moving the goalpost. Doesn't even give time to Jordan Peterson to just get his stuff out like he wants. I have to give it
Sure,
to her.
that's no problem. The first thing is that the philosophy
she's gonna
presumes
change
that
it.
group identity is paramount. That's the fundamental philosophy that drove the Soviet Union and Maoist China. And it's the fundamental philosophy of the left-wing activists. It's identity politics. It doesn't matter who you are as an individual. It matters who you are in terms of your group identity.
You're just
That's
saying these
murderous-
things, though, to provoke, aren't you? I mean,
Not
you
a
are a
bit.
provocateur.
I never said
You're like
anything-
the alt-right that you hate to be compared to.
Provocative. I don't provoke. Maybe for
You don't
humor
set out to
now and
provoke.
then. I'm not interested in provoking.
But what
Not in
about the thing
least.
about, fighting and the lobster? Tell us about the lobster.
It's good. I love that.
Well, that's quite a segue. Well, the first
You see,
chapter I have
controlling
in my
the
book
conversation.
is called Stand Up Straight with Your Shoulders Back. And it's an injunction to be combative, not least to further your career, let's say, but also to adopt a stance of ready engagement with the world and to reflect that in your posture. And the reason that I write about lobsters is because there's this idea that hierarchical structures are a sociological construct of the Western patriarchy. And that is so untrue that it's almost unbelievable. And I use the lobster as an example because the lobster, we divulged from lobsters in evolutionary history about 350 million years ago, common ancestor. And lobsters exist in hierarchies, and they have a nervous system attuned to the hierarchy. And that nervous system runs on serotonin, just like our nervous systems do. And the nervous system of the lobster and of the human being is so similar that antidepressants work on lobsters. And it's part of my attempt to demonstrate that the idea of hierarchy has absolutely nothing to do with sociocultural construction, which it doesn't.
Let me just get this straight. You're saying that we should organise our societies along the lines of the lobsters?
I'm saying that it's inevitable that there will be continuity in the way that animals and human beings organize their structures. It's absolutely inevitable. And there is 1/3 of a billion years of evolutionary history behind that. Right? That's so long that 1/3 of a billion years ago, there weren't even trees. It's a long time. You have a mechanism in your brain that runs on serotonin that's similar to the lobster mechanism that tracks your status. And the higher your status, the better your emotions are regulated. So as your serotonin levels increase, you feel more positive emotion and less negative emotion.
So you're saying, like the lobsters, we're hardwired as men and women to do certain things, to sort of run along tram lines, and there's nothing we can do about it?
No, I'm not saying there's nothing we can do about it, because
She's projecting.
it's like in a chess game, right? There's lots
She
of
don't
things
want to
that
accept
you can
her
do,
nature.
although you can't break the rules.
She don't want to accept that there's might be some nature on her that will predict certain behaviors. She don't want to admit that. She's having a problem with that concept.
Of the chess game and continue to play chess. And your biological nature is somewhat like that, is it sets the rules of the game, but within those rules you have a lot of leeway. But the idea that, but one thing we can't do is say that hierarchical organization is a consequence of the capitalist patriarchy. It's like, that's patently absurd. It's wrong. It's not a matter of opinion. It's seriously wrong.
Aren't you just whipping people up into a state of anger? And
Not at all.
Divisions between men and women, you're stirring people up. You know, you have any critics of you online get absolutely lambasted by your followers. You've
And
got to
by
call
me,
them off, haven't
generally.
you? Sorry, your critics get lambasted by you. I mean,
If
isn't
they're
that
academics,
irresponsible?
not at all. If an academic is going to come
Okay.
after me and tell me that I'm not qualified and that I don't know what I'm talking about,
So
like,
you're
it's
not going to say
seriously
to your
not the
followers
same.
now, quit the abuse, quit the anger?
Well, we'd need some substantial examples of the abuse and the anger before I could detail that question.
There's a lot of it out there.
Let's take a more general perspective on that. So I've had 25,000 letters since June, something like that, from people who told me that I've brought them back from the brink of destruction.
Wow.
And so I'm perfectly willing to put
Wow.
that up against the rather vague accusations that my followers are making the lives of people that I've targeted miserable.
Jordan Peterson, thank you.
My pleasure. Nice talking with you.
Oh, that was very interesting. And I only saw a couple of clips from that interview years ago, but not the entire thing. Wow, that, oof. She was controlling the conversation, but Jordan Peterson was ready for it. He was ready for it. He's a very smart guy. He knows what to do. He managed to go through it. I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I wrong to think the thing I was thinking, or you might guys be in the same position? Let me know in the comments section.